So first play of the game, we used motion to develop an advantage on this play. Let's kind of check out how that developed. We used the tight end shift here, and you'll notice that Iowa State uses their safeties to account for the change in alignment. So they bring this safety down. They're now showing us an 8-man front. And then at the last second, we bring DJ Monroe across, and so they account for this shift again with their safeties. So they're going to back this safety off to be the free safety, and this safety is going to come down and become the force player on the outside here. But what we do instead of running to this side where they have actually accounted for the shift is we take advantage of this weakened backside here. Because when they do this shift, this linebacker becomes the force player on this backside, but he doesn't have time to get in position to be the force player, so he doesn't have the leverage that he should to be able to keep this play from going outside. So we run flex outside zone, which is designed to seal off the defensive end and then pull these two linemen to the outside. And one thing to notice is in space here, we don't cut with our blocker, and that produces great results for us. Malcolm Brown breaks loose, and if not for this horse collar tackle, this probably goes for a touchdown. Right? That player is not going to make the tackle on the leverage that he's got, and Malcolm Brown keeps going there, most likely for a touchdown. Let's look at that again from the replay just up front. I want to also notice how Iowa State is playing in the front. So notice that when the ball is snapped here, what Iowa State's doing with their front is they're basically pinching their defensive line. What that means is that all of their defensive line are trying to push inside off the snap, and they're going to try to control sort of C-gap to C-gap with their defensive line, and then that allows their second-level players to flow outside hard toward the ball. So we'll see that as kind of a continuing theme in the running game. In this particular instance, that produced great results for the play that we had called, because their defensive end takes himself out of position and allows our tight end to seal him easily. You can see Dominic Jones creates a great edge here for the flex play. And, right now we've got two blockers, one defender, and the running back, a whole lot of room. So this is a nice play. It also broke some tendencies. We don't typically run flex outside zone to the weak side as much. And the fact that we paired that with our jet sweep action is something else that was kind of new. Usually we run inside zone or power paired with that play. So we caught Iowa State a little bit off guard on that play. Second play of the drive, we line up in diamond formation. And we're going to run the power read here. You'll notice that once again, Iowa State is going to crash their defensive ends on this play. And so that leads us to handing off on the power read. So Monroe runs a sweep. You can see here if the blocking goes correctly, then he ends up in a one-on-one with this linebacker, which is on the sweep, we feel like he's going to be able to get that angle. And that's actually what happens here. He's able to create the angle and get around this linebacker and pick up yards. If we just go back here a second, one thing to notice is if we were running play action off this play, this might be something to look for when we do run diamond in the future. So if we notice, if we were running play action here, then you've got Whitaker coming out here to a lot of space, and this linebacker is, held in place by the power read action. You're getting one-on-ones on the outside, and then you've got this dump off to Whitaker in the flat that would, be pretty wide open for a big game. So that's something to look for as play action off of this play. So that left us in a second and short, and we came out and ran this toss sweep, which we use outside zone blocking for. This play got blown up in the backfield, Um, but a big part of that was the decision that Malcolm Brown made. If we just back up here a second, kind of look at the blocking. Um, Obviously the thing that pops out at you is this defensive end pushing Hopkins into the backfield. But what's supposed to happen on this play um, is Dominic Jones supposed to come off the line and kind of either he takes this block or, which on the rules that we called, obviously what he should do is kind of chip this player and allow Hopkins to get in position. Jones kind of just stands up here, barely gets any of the defensive end, and Hopkins is struggling to get his helmet on the play side of this play. That's what he's supposed to do, is try to get his helmet on the outside of this defender. Brown is supposed to be reading this block on an outside zone blocking. So he's reading to see if he sees that helmet placement and whether we have the defensive end. If we do have the defensive end, then he's going to take this play to the outside. If we don't, then he's supposed to cut it inside of that defensive end. I think what makes this read difficult for him is the fact that the player's coming back toward him, so it's a harder read to get your eyes on. So in this situation, what Hopkins could do or should do is, rather than struggling to get his helmet play side, if he's losing a battle like that, what he wants to do is just ride this defender down the line. So don't try to get your helmet play side, but just go ahead and take the angle that you have, ride this defender straight down the line. And that's going to make a very clear read for Brown that I need to go inside of this block. So that being said, what you'd like to see is for Brown to cut this up inside. There's a beautiful hole in this play that's available, and that's the logic of outside zone, of using outside zone blocking rather than man blocking on a play like this, is that you might get other holes to open up by creating this sideways action. Let's take a look at the replay and kind of see what I'm talking about here. So you can see off the pitch, if we just go into this blocking a little bit more. What's happening here is, if you look at assignments across the line, Jones and Irby are going to come out here and try to cut in space to take out two of these linebackers. Hopkins is supposed to come over and reach this defensive end. Walters is supposed to help on this defensive tackle and then get to the second level and try to cut off any backside pursuit. And you'll notice, sort of the assignment that Walters and Espinoza have on this defensive tackle is basically the same assignment that Jones and Hopkins are supposed to have on this defensive end. Just look at the difference in the way that these guys handle their assignment compared to how these guys were trying to handle theirs. It's specifically what Walters does to help Espinoza as opposed to what Jones did with Hopkins. So as this is coming off, see, Walters gets a nice chip on this defender that allows Espinoza to get in position and create a seal. And that's what you want to do on this play. Outside zone is supposed to have a hard lateral action. Then you want to create traffic jams by reaching defenders. And so those traffic jams on this play are supposed to occur with the blocking the way it is, with Espinoza on this defensive tackle and with Hopkins on this defensive end. But what you can't see is a huge running lane that is available on this play. So part of the reason this went for a loss is because Malcolm Brown made the wrong read on this run. When he gets this ball, what you'd like to see is either right on this step when he gets the ball, it's for him to be cutting upfield. On this step, he could still cut upfield. Again, there's still great running room there. Even though there's a linebacker in the hole, he still has the advantage in that situation. So it's Malcolm Brown played primarily in a gap scheme in high school. He will learn to make those zone blocking reads. Hopkins, the other thing I guess I would just mention is we want to get to a point where we stop chasing our assignments when they're lost and instead just make the best block available to us. Espinoza is really great about that right now. And it's something that, Hopkins could improve on, and really all of our linemen can improve on. Usually you don't see that type of play where they're making good decisions about their blocks like that until they're juniors or seniors. So the fact that Espinoza is so good at it as a freshman is really telling. So we ended up on a 4th and 1 in this drive, and this is the 4th and 1 that gets stuffed. Although we've been really great in short yardage so far this year, this didn't go so well. Let's kind of look at why. So we're running the power plus like we've been running primarily in short yardage on these plays, and Cochran is in a battle here with the defensive end. What he's supposed to do in power plus blocking is take this play and ride it inside, or take this defensive end and ride it inside. He ends up just kind of locking up with him though, and losing a little ground. So he doesn't really fire out, he just kind of meets him, which is fine if he turns him inside. If he doesn't turn him inside, then it kind of disrupts the play. The other thing that goes wrong on this play is Cody Johnson decides that he is running to the C gap, and then he just runs there no matter what. So he realizes at this point that the C gap is closed, and then he tries to get outside. But what I'd like to see from Cody Johnson, if he's going to continue to be our short yardage back, is he has got to pay attention to his lead blocks. He's got the best blocker, pure blocker on our team, and Berryhill leading him on these plays. And he's got to trust that lead blocker to open up room for him. We saw an instance against UCLA where we were running power blocking, and Cody didn't follow his blocks. So he picked up the first down, but he could have picked up a lot more if he just followed his lead block. In this case, it kind of costs us because we don't get the conversion. If he takes the line to follow Berryhill on this play, Berryhill cleans out over here and creates space for him. So if he's on that wider release with Berryhill, from the time he gets this ball, then he's able to pick up the first down. Instead, coming from the inside out, he gets caught on Cochran, who's been pushed in the backfield, and he gets stopped before he can get the conversion. So, either Cody needs kind of to change the way that he's running that play, or we need to investigate other people in short yardage situations, in my opinion. So open up the next drive with a counter play. This is kind of an interesting version of the counter that we ran in this game for Iowa State. Normally when we run the counter in a situation like this, what we would do is you get your initial step from the tailback, and then you get the H-back coming across the formation, and you'd get the pulling guard coming across the formation for the counter. So you'd have basically equivalent of two players coming across, similar to a counter tray, but rather than using the guard and the tackle, we use the guard and the H-back. What we do instead here is we have Cody Johnson as the H-back fire out to the play side to try to help sell this play. Now, part of the reason for that is we have been running ISO this year. And so if you have anyone keying off of the H-back or the fullback, then this is going to sell them on an ISO play. And that's going to get some flow to the wrong side of the formation here. So, that can hopefully take away some of your linebackers on your cutback here. So we do get that, although it looks like Iowa State's defense, what they're doing by default is they're crashing their defensive ends. They're basically saying, we don't really believe you can run inside on us. So you'll notice on almost all the running plays that their linebackers are crashing hard, or just hitting the outside of the formation hard off the snap. Not really run blitzing, which a lot of people kind of categorize what Iowa State is run blitzing. Instead, what they're doing is giving us 8 and 9 man fronts and just hitting those outside off tackle gaps really hard off the snap. So what happens here is Dominic Jones loses his battle with the defensive end who's crashing for the C gap here. The defensive end beats him. He doesn't. This is the one thing that Jones can't do on this play, is allow penetration. Defensive end beats him, gets penetration, and on a slow developing run, that's the killer more than anything else, especially with the defensive end for him to get in the backfield. So that's what blows this play up, and Malcolm Brown gets tackled for a loss. You can see if that block gets made, then Snow was a little bit too wide on his pull here. so he's a little bit too wide to pick up this player that's his assignment. But even with that missed block, if there isn't this penetration, Malcolm Brown gets the corner here easy and has a good chance to turn this play up for a pretty big gain. But as it goes for 6-yard loss. So demonstrates that sometimes you can miss assignments and you can still get a lot of good things happen on a play. On a play like this, especially on a play that involves kind of a slow developing run, if you miss an assignment and allow penetration, there's almost no chance that the run is going to go for positive yardage. So even though it's not a running play, I wanted to check out this second down play we ran because it feeds into our running game. You notice this initial action, it looks just like or very similar to the triple option action that we've been having where we motion Monroe into the split back alignment, and then we run triple option off of it. So we're faking that, and then Monroe is kind of out here. The idea is to create pressure on these play side defenders right here, and that allows DJ Grant to slip free behind him, and that's what this whole play is based on. So this pickup was based on the pressure that our triple option puts on the defense. So we came out in Wildcat and ran the speed sweep here, and Iowa State, once they see this action, see their safety, he basically blitzes the play. And this is good scouting by Iowa State. This is one way to defend that speed sweep, is to get a player in motion on your defense and get a blitz on that side to try to penetrate. So he's able to get backfield before Davis is able to get on him. And so that kind of creates a problem because it creates penetration that requires Shipley to widen his running lane, and then that gives the defenders a wider pursuit angle, so Johnson doesn't have a chance to get to his assignment because of that wider angle of pursuit, and able to basically run this to the sideline. The fact that Shipley turns this up at all is pretty impressive. So what can we do about that? Well, one simple adjustment is just to bring the alignment of Davis a little bit closer to the formation in a case like this. That's going to allow him to pick up any player that's trying to penetrate like that. And it's also going to bring Johnson's assignment a little bit closer to him. So it's basically going to create a little bit of a closer edge. We have to watch out for then is a potential blitz from this defender, so that it solves the problem of a blitz from the safety, but creates another problem. So just the back and forth that's going to be happening with a play like this. The other thing that this sort of hits on is this isn't a true read for us. We either call this speed sweep, or we might call the inside zone or the counter to Fozzie, and so because we're not truly reading the defense, it gives them a chance on the right call to get us stopped for a loss or to shut the play down. So we have to vary our play calling, which we have been doing from the Wildcat very well. And this is probably what we'll see against better defenses is we'll get some big hits in the Wildcat, and then we'll also get some misses. So then the next play we run power read, and we're running it from 4 wide here. Because Iowa State's crashing their defensive ends to C-gaps, then this is definitely going to be a handoff on power read. But notice what that creates. It basically creates a foot race between DJ Monroe and this linebacker. And then you've got 3-on-3 out here in space. So, at least on paper, that's a great matchup for the offense. That's exactly what we want. This defender has almost no chance of running Monroe down as long as we get solid or decent delay from all of these defenders from our players in space. This gives me a chance to gripe a little bit. This play is a great example of the difference between the effectiveness of trying to cut a flat-footed defender, or just basically playing chicken with them in space. So notice Goodwin and Shipley and what they're able to do to their assignments versus attempting to cut this defender. So we attempt to cut a flat-foot defender. He shrugs off the cut easily. Now he's free to pursue the play. Meanwhile, these defenders are still having to contend with their blockers. And you can see what ultimately leads to this play being shut down is that Monroe is not able to cut upfield because he has a free defender. That means he has to widen this as far as he can, and that puts him in the grasp of this defender. So it's clear at this point that the wide receivers have the option to cut or not cut. We have to make better decisions, and that's going to be a big key to the game this weekend, is how our wide receiver and tight end blocking go in terms of being able to produce big plays. If we cut off the pursuit from this defender, you can see that Monroe would have had a huge running lane on this play, and he probably would have scored if not for that one free defender. So then the next drive, we come out and run a counter to start the drive. You can see the initial action here from Malcolm Brown is to this far side of the field, and then he gets back and comes play side. You can see this is the typical blocking that we do for counter, where we are bringing the H-back and the guard across to block, similar to power blocking. So what gets us on this play, we continue to struggle with these crashing defensive ends. You can see this defensive end crashes really hard and sort of gets in the C-gap here. And Walters struggles picking up that assignment, which this is his assignment as he comes down the line. He struggles picking up that assignment, and what he wants to do is get in on this defensive end and then get him either turned inside or pushed upfield. He's able to barely get his arm around him. And this defensive end is able to kind of make a great play, which is get inside and then cut back out and make a play on the counter. Because it's slow developing, he has the time for that to happen. The rest of the blocking looks pretty good on this play. You'd like to get a little bit of a better win from Cody Johnson, this linebacker, but other than that, you're pretty happy. Or I should say on the safety instead of the linebacker. So you'd like to get a little bit better push there, but the play gets stopped either way from the defensive end getting in the backfield. So this is definitely something that we needed to address, was how to deal with these defensive ends crashing. We had some things that were going good for us in terms of the power read off of that, but our off-tackle game was struggling. The other thing to notice about this play is it's basically a broken play. This motion from Monroe is supposed to come all the way across the formation before we snap the ball. I think because the play clock's winding down maybe, Espinoza snaps the ball early here, and so we just run the counter without this sweep action, creating hesitation at the linebacker level. So that's another factor that could have affected this play. So later in the drive, we pick up and run this little shuttle pass. This is one of my favorite plays that we installed for this game. So notice we get the motion with Monroe out here, and so we're running the double screen concept. And the idea there is that's going to create a split in the defense. They're going to have to defend both sides of the field on these screens. And then behind that, we open up a little shuttle pass on the inside. And so the idea is we split the defense and then create a lane right up the middle to exploit. A great concept. I'd like to see Espinoza turn around in a situation like this where he loses his block and just pick up another defender. But as it is, it effectively picks up the first down. You can see, at the moment when we get this play, if we get a little bit crisper execution on this play, there's a beautiful divide in the defense to try to exploit. And we're just not quite there. Get a little bit crisper execution and get Whitaker in a situation where he can turn upfield a little bit faster, and you might get a much bigger play there. This is one of my favorite plays from the game. We use a burst motion concept where we align in one formation. Actually, we're like in a diamond alignment here. And you could envision this being a quick snap, potentially too, to Irby if we were in some sort of short yardage situation. So you force the defense to align to it. Then you quick motion to a new alignment. We know exactly where we want to be once we get set, and we can snap the ball. And what you're hoping is to get a misalignment from the defense somewhere. And you can see, again, we're running a sweep concept off of this, this time with Monroe. Their safety is, again, aggressively attacking it. And this time they kind of pay for that because they don't have anyone at home as this play develops to protect once you get past the front. So we run a power concept here, which Iowa State defends pretty well. This linebacker comes in and is ready to clean it up. But Whitaker makes a great read and reads a cutback on the power, which is not normally there, but since teams have been overplaying our C-gap so much on the play side, we've had some plays open up in the last two games on cutbacks on the power. So Monroe sees that, and he's able to take this all the way from the touchdown since there's no safety at home. So really great read by Monroe there. And let's just look at the blocking again here. So the offensive line does what it's supposed to, but you can see how hard, look at their linebackers just split, and then their safety also coming out wide. They basically just split their whole second line of defense, and that leaves no one at home once you get past the first level. So because these guys had to play the sweep on the backside, there's no backside defenders open once we make the cutback on the power. So again, great read by Whitaker, and there are sacrifices that a defense has to make in order to defend all of the options that we're presenting to them, and we've shown that we're able to exploit those overplays. So that's a huge trend going into the OU game this weekend. So next drive we open up with inside zone, and you can see we're running a double tight formation here, and then we actually bring the wide receiver in, and Miles is our best blocking wide receiver too, so we're definitely going for blocks on this play. So you can see we run inside zone. We've got a 5-man defensive front here, and we get good seals on the play side. One thing that doesn't go great for us on this play is Walters tries to fire off really hard on this defensive end, and he loses his footing a little bit. So he'd be a little bit better off if he stayed in control here. But he loses his footing. He still takes out this linebacker, so he makes the best of the circumstance. But his assignment's actually this linebacker over here. So that leaves a free defender who's able to cut back and make the stop here. I want to pay attention to Malcolm Brown here, the cut that he makes. So this is where running back talent really can make a difference. If this is any running back besides Malcolm Brown, this play most likely gets stopped at the line of scrimmage because this defensive end does a really good job of crashing down the line and squeezing this gap. But look at the cut that Brown makes to get vertical there. That's a beautiful cut. I think we need to kind of change our thinking about what type of back Malcolm Brown is. He's not a power back. He is an incredible runner who can run powerfully. And that type of cut shows his versatility. It also shows that, we think of Malcolm Brown as being best suited for gap blocking, but there's a huge upside for him in zone blocking as well, with vertical cuts like that. So this defender kind of saves the defense on this play because he doesn't make the play, then Malcolm Brown is headed upfield with a lot of momentum, and really the safety is the only one in position to try to make a play on him. So open the next drive with the diamond formation, and we again run this power read concept. And this is sort of, one of the ways that we're punishing Iowa State for crashing their defensive ends every play is we're saying, okay, well then that means that you're going to end up giving us a good matchup with Monroe in space, and so we'll take that on the power read. You can see we use Malcolm Brown as a lead blocker on this play. So that's an interesting thing to note, that we've taught Malcolm Brown how to lead block, albeit he just cuts in this play, but that means that we'll be more likely to use him in other scenarios where he might be a lead blocker, like potentially a quarterback draw or something like that. Anyhow, so Monroe gets the edge here, and he's able to pick up around 9 yards on the play. Great run after contact on that play too. Monroe's so fast that it makes it difficult for defenders to get there get a good hit on him, and that allows him a lot of times to pick up extra yards after contact. So we come back and we rerun the first play that we ran in the ball game. This sweep packaged with the jet sweep package with the flex outside zone. This looks like a missed assignment to me. I think that Dominic Jones is originally thinking he's got this safety. Then as the motion happens, the safety disappears, and we end up leaving the defensive end unblocked, which on the flex outside zone play would be a horrible mistake. That really would be the opposite of how you want this to work. So Jones should definitely have the pin block here like he did on the very first play of the game. The play still manages to be successful because we again have the defense completely out-leveraged, but this defensive end does get in the backfield, and that takes away one of our blockers, one of our pullers. We still get a pretty good pickup on the play, but I think if Jones had pinned that defensive end, it's even better. This is an interesting play. We run pistol here with a triangle concept, and you can see the snap here. We get these two pins. We do a good job of pinning here, and we create enough push with both those guys. Again, you can allow those defenders to penetrate as long as you're creating a seal. We get our pullers out, but we're outnumbered at the point of attack. Ideally on this play, this backside tackle, Kelly in this case, is able to cut this linebacker and create 2-on-2, but it's a really tough assignment. So we're a little bit outnumbered there, and then Malcolm Brown's still able to get a pickup, but it's not quite what we want. But just notice something on this play if you think about play packaging. And just imagine for a moment if instead of these guys actually going down and trying to cut, or even if they do, still run this blocking, if you look on the backside here, if that's a play fake, then you've got this screen set up right here. You've taken this whole part of the defense and pulled them with the flex concept, and now you've got a great situation to throw a late developing screen. So that's kind of just an interesting thing to look at in terms of packaging going forward. So the very next play, we keep picking on the same weakness here. If they're going to crash their defensive ends, then we're just going to keep running this flex concept since they're giving us that edge every single time. One thing to notice here, if you want to see what a wide receiver can do in space when they know how to block, kind of check out Anye on this linebacker. It's a great block. So we again are able to create an advantage with the flex concept. Again, nice running lane here, and you can see Harsin picking at the same weakness in the defense over and over again. Again, we do a great job on our pins here. We actually create a little bit of a traffic jam there. That's going to give us a numbers advantage in space. Both Snow and Espinoza, do a good job pulling there, and we get a nice pickup. So this play is something I've been waiting to see for a while. We're in the Ash package here, and we have Monroe motion out to the triangle concept. So that's the threat of the triangle screen. You can see that pulls 3 defenders to the outside here and occupies them. Then to the same side of this play, we're reading the defensive end, and we've got a zone read concept running here. Now, this play potentially could have gone for a nice gain, but one thing kind of foils it, so let's see what kind of happens here. The defensive end's crashing, so that's going to lead Ash to keep the ball here. But then as he comes around, he's got a defender waiting for him. And he actually ends up with 2 defenders clogging things up. So let's kind of see what happens, why that play gets blown up. It all starts with this line stunt from the defensive tackles. And Iowa State started running this stunt more and more as the game went on. So they twist their defensive tackles here, and that brings an extra defensive tackle to the play side here. So it allows them to do 2 things. This makes them give the appearance that we should be keeping the ball on this read with a crashing defensive end, but then actually bringing another defender to the play side. And what that means is that Hopkins, who would normally fire out here, pick up this linebacker, has to pick up this stunting defensive tackle first, and that doesn't allow him to get to the linebacker, so they've got a free defender on the keeper here. So that's really how Iowa State was able to defend this play. It's a great concept defensively. The reaction to it would be that it leaves them a little bit susceptible to the inside zone. But since they're confounding the read, our quarterback is still thinking that he needs to keep the ball. We did come back later from the pistol and run inside zone against this same look, and we had some success with it. So there is ways to punish it, but it's a nice call if you can get it in against the replay, the zone replay. So next drive, we come back to the well one more time on the flex concept. And again, we packaged it with this jet sweep. We rocket pitch it. This time, the defensive tackle that we're trying to pin gets upfield really fast. And that causes Espinoza to get delayed on his pull. So we only end with one lineman pulling in space. One thing I want to point out, so once Espinoza, he still tries to get upfield after getting delayed. And this is great. Now, the only thing is, after I bragged on him earlier, he kind of chases his assignment a little bit here. He's still looking to this assignment. When ideally what we would have any lineman in that situation do is then now just turn your attention upfield and make the block that you can make. So Whitaker does a great job of cutting here and turning this play into a gain, even though it looks like it's going to be for a loss. Now, if Espinoza had turned upfield and picked up this defensive tackle, now all of a sudden this play is completely viable, and Whitaker probably picks up the first down. But instead, we just end up getting like 3 yards on it. So again, it's really important for our linemen. One of the areas I thought the linemen did great in the first half of this game. We only had a few missed assignments. But one thing we could really improve is keeping our awareness, and if the play gets messed up a little bit or something goes wrong, make the block you can make rather than trying to make the block you were assigned to make. So last running play of the first half here for us. And we run the power read concept here. They're crashing their defensive ends again. There's a little bit of a mistake here on the blocking from the wide receivers on this play. If they're looking at their assignments, then we should have this assignment, and that would mean that this wide receiver should come back and block this linebacker. And if that happens, this play goes for probably a huge gain. As it is, Monroe is in space one-on-one with the linebacker and makes a great cut there. Shows once again that if you give him the ball in space, he's going to make good things happen. So he gets, 9 yards there off of what looked like something that might get stopped in the backfield. But again, just notice how wide open this is if this wide receiver comes in and clogs this linebacker some. If he's coming out there, then now all of a sudden you've got huge running lane possibilities for Monroe. So we're just going to look at a few plays from the second half as well. We opened the second half with this same counter concept we ran early in the game. So CJ is going to block to this side. We start with initial action to this weak side of the formation, and then we cut back strong side on a counter. This play goes for a big gain because Whitaker makes a cutback on the play and finds a nice running lane up the middle. But I'll point out a few things out about this play in terms of why we opened the half with it. This is a great diagnostic play for Harsin to see what adjustments Iowa State has made at halftime. So in the first half, Iowa State's getting killed by the flex outside zone play. It looks like the adjustment they made in the second half was they told their linebackers to pay attention. They're keying on any pulling lineman. So any pulling lineman, and they're going with that flow without a doubt. So you can see here, they see the pulling lineman, and they're attacking outside on that side. There's no keying at all off the action of the running back or off of CJ. Actually, I take that back. This middle linebacker is keying off of Whitaker's action. So you can see he's reading Whitaker, but no one is reading our H-back at all. And so that's one of the dynamics that played out a little bit in the second half was anytime we pulled linemen, they crashed really hard to that side. The other thing, just to recall about the overall dynamic of the running game is because they're attacking so hard with their linebackers, it opens up the second level of the defense to cutbacks, and Whitaker takes advantage of that again here on this play. So that's something to think about going forward and thinking about the OU game is they have the same sort of front philosophy of attacking really hard with their linebackers, and that does leave them open to some cutback lanes on our plays. So you might see plays like power not go in their intended gap, but get cut back for big gains. Same thing with counter plays. So we come back in the next play and run another counter concept. This time we package it with the jet sweep. And we run our more traditional counter where we pull two. And again, we find great success here with the counter. It's clear it's one of our halftime adjustments was to say, okay, you're crashing your defensive ends and you are reacting with your linebackers. Harsin saw on that first play that they're responding to pulling linemen, so we start working the counter action to try to create some numbers advantages at the linebacker level. So one thing I would point out, we'll continue to look at this drive, but we kind of went away from those concepts in the second half after the first drive once the game was put away. So some people have talked about how we kind of closed up shop on the playbook, and that's largely true. We definitely could have kept working these counter concepts to success going forward in the game, and instead what we did was sub in some different personnel and started working on inside zone and some other stuff. So in the third play of the drive, we again package the jet sweep. So this is basically the same look we just showed. This time, instead of running the counter, we run the power concept to that same side of the field. CJ does a great job on his block here. His blocking is starting to pick up. And we switched out our offensive line personnel, so Hopkins is now at guard. He's a great pulling guard. You can see even though the defensive end crashed the C gap here, and Jones has lost control of him a little bit, Hopkins does a great job of just staying calm here. He lets the defender come to him. Malcolm Brown's able to stay patient with his blocking, and he still picks up a lane here and gets a nice gain on the play. So we're coming out in the second half and just killing them with our gap concepts to create some momentum down the field. We're basically marching right down the field over 5 yards a pop.